Picking up with chapter 3 now, we move to the discussion of audience analysis, understanding audiences. There's two basic ways that we're going to think about audiences in terms of demographics, sociologically who people are, their social identities, and also in terms of the beliefs, attitudes, and values that might characterize a particular audience in a particular context. And the overarching goal of thinking about the audience is that we want to try to create what's called identification with our audience. That, as we'll see, scholar named Kenneth Burke identified identification. He said that identification is like the most important way you can try to connect with and win over an audience in speaking. Demography, so the way of thinking about who's in your audience in terms of like who they are in their social identities, defined a little more formally as statistical characteristics of a population. So all those different ways that you see like on surveys maybe that populations are broken down in terms of these sort of subcategories of groups that people belong to. It's important to think about because people with different demographic characteristics have different experiences. They might have, a tendency to think more in one way or in another way. They might be more inclined to be like skeptical of you as a speaker or more inclined to see you as somebody that they relate to. So it's really good to think about this. We want to make sure that we're not stereotyping. Stereotyping means sort of overgeneralizing about the way in which people who belong to a particular social group are. And so it's inevitable to kind of make some of these sort of inferences about people just because we have to make judgments with limited information as human beings navigating the world socially. But we want to be really careful that we're certainly not relying on offensive stereotypes, but that we're not stereotyping in general. That we don't think that all people who belong to a particular group are X way, or some have some particular tendency to behave in a particular way, or are always good at something or always bad at something, or something like that. So just going to go through a couple of the different forms of demographic breakdowns, the different categories of demography. Age is a big one. We're all, you're all at least probably in the same rough range. There are sometimes some older students in the class, which is always great because people have different perspectives when they've lived longer. But so thinking about age in terms of the ways that would change your perceptions of a speaker as a member of the audience. If you're younger, you might have had particular life experiences. You might not have had particular life experiences but more importantly, there might be things that you really are concerned with in the moment as a function of your age that you would not be that concerned with if you were a different age. And so Erik Erikson, this famous sociologist, pointed to these different crisis points, different stages of your life. Like when you're summarized on the next slide, like when you're a teenager, the things that you're not particularly inclined to think that much about are like long-term consequences of things. People saying, if you don't do this, then you're going to screw yourself over in the long run. Doesn't resonate that much to a teenager. I certainly remember that. Maybe you all can too. The things that really do concern you at that time are, basically making connections with people, right? Figuring out how you're going to get yourself started and, pursue a life that makes you happy in the moment, right? So just using that as one example of how age could affect the audience's mindset in a speech situation. If you're talking to a group of teenagers, there are certain things that are going to, sort of click with what they're concerned about in life at that particular time. That would be different if you're talking to somebody who's middle-aged, let's say, who might have much different sort of long-term concerns, might be looking to the past as well as the future, might be kind of a little more moderate, typically, both politically, but also just in terms of, their approach to life, their lifestyle. They might be kind of trying to keep it a little more even keel and be wary of anyone trying to, sort of get those